For a year, I thought I was committing a small act of kindness. I had no idea I was paying the only man who knew the truth about my husband. A truth so dangerous, he finally risked everything to stop me from getting into a car. The city held its breath in the hour before dawn, a world painted in shades of graphite and deep blue. In a quiet apartment, Keisha Vaughn lay awake beside her husband Marcus, listening to the soft, even rhythm of his sleep, a rhythm she now knew was the beat of a profound and practiced deceit. For a year, her own secret had been a small, tight knot of guilt in her chest, the envelopes of cash, carefully folded and passed in the twilight of the park to Mr. Otis, the old driver Marcus had fired. It was her silent rebellion, her private charity for a man left with nothing, a man who had seen too much. She told herself this small crime against their household budget was a kindness, a necessary mercy. She had no idea it was the first fragile thread she had begun to pull, and that pulling it would unravel not just a lie, but an entire hidden life, a life that was now a direct and terrifying threat to her own. The confrontation had come not in their usual secluded spot, but under the stark, flickering eye of a street lamp outside the 24-hour bodega. Otis's face, usually a map of weary resignation, had been etched with a raw, primal fear. His grip on her arm had been desperate, his whisper a rasp against the damp night air. "Tomorrow, don't get in the car with your husband. Take the bus, the 7:15 to Fairview. It is a matter of life and death. You'll understand everything when you see who is on that bus." He had melted back into the shadows, leaving her clutching a bag of groceries, the cold of his warning seeping deeper than the chill of the evening. Upstairs, in the glowing square of their kitchen window, Marcus's silhouette had moved, pacing, phone pressed to his ear. He'd been on the phone so often lately, always turning away, his voice dropping to a hushed, urgent murmur. A matter of her life? Or was it a matter of someone else's death? The question coiled in her gut, cold and heavy. But before that whisper had fissured her world, it had been just an ordinary Tuesday. An ordinary gray day that smelled of dust from the stockroom and the sharp, clean scent of lavender laundry detergent from the newly unpacked shelves. Keisha stood at the register of Cozy Home, the small housewares store she managed, mechanically straightening a stack of plush terry cloth towels. At 38, she felt a familiar tiredness in her bones, but the reflection in the shop window as dusk bled into evening showed a woman even older. Her shoulders, strong from hauling boxes of ceramic dishes and small furniture, carried a perpetual slump. Shadows, the permanent kind no eye cream could erase, lingered in the corners of her eyes. "Keisha, honey, ring up this tablecloth for me, too," rasped a regular, Mrs. Patterson, her beige raincoat rustling. "Just check for any snags, because last time—" "Of course, Mrs. Patterson," Keisha replied, her voice soft, practiced, a soothing balm. She unfolded the linen fabric, her fingers, working hands with short, unpolished nails and skin dry from constant washing, smoothing over the surface. They were capable hands, hands that could mend a seam or arrange a display with artful ease, but hands she sometimes felt shy about resting on a starched tablecloth at one of Marcus's work dinners. She offered the customer a smile, but her thoughts were already drifting away, pulled toward the evening and the secret it held. Today was the 18th, the day for the envelope. When the store closed and the heavy security shutter rattled down with a final, definitive clang, cutting off the warm, ordered world of scented candles and woven throws from the gathering gloom of the street, Keisha didn't turn toward home. Instead, she pulled her coat tighter, a sensible gray wool bought on clearance 3 winters ago, still decent, still presentable, and turned her steps toward the park. In her pocket, inside an old leather wallet worn soft at the quarters, was a white envelope. It contained $40. To some of the women who browsed her store, that was the cost of a salad and sparkling water at a fashionable cafe. To Keisha, it was the new winter boots she'd denied herself, the ones with the proper insulation her aching feet craved. But for the man waiting on the bench under the skeletal branches of an old maple tree, it was, quite simply, life. Mr. Otis, just Otis to most, sat hunched against the cold. He had been Marcus's driver for 5 years, a quiet, dependable presence, until the day Marcus stormed home, thrown his keys on the hall table with a crack, and announced, "I fired the old man. He's become unreliable, forgetful, let the smell like smoke." Keisha knew Otis hadn't smoked in a decade. She also suspected his unreliability stemmed only from seeing too much and being incapable of the oily, convenient silence Marcus preferred. She hadn't argued. She rarely did. Arguing was a storm that disrupted the calm surface of their life, and she was the keeper of that calm. So she had begun her quiet penance, skimming bits from her small bonuses, taking on extra alterations for neighbors, saving on her own lunches. "Mr. Otis?" she called softly. He started, his head rising. Under the jaundiced glow of the street lamp, his brown skin looked parchment-thin and fragile. "Keisha," he made to stand, leaning heavily on his cane, but she waved him down. "It's freezing out. You shouldn't have come." Her eyes swept the deserted park before she quickly pressed the envelope into his hand. His fingers were ice, trembling slightly as they closed around the paper. "Buy that heart medicine you talked about," she instructed, her voice low, "and fruit. Make sure you get some fruit." "Baby girl, you shouldn't." His whisper was thick with emotion. "If Marcus finds out—" "He won't," but they both heard the uncertainty in her words. His eyes grew bright, wet. "You are a saint of a woman. He doesn't deserve you. Lord knows he doesn't." "Oh, hush now." She waved him off, embarrassment heating her cheeks. She was no saint. She was just a woman who remembered things. Otis picking her up from the hospital when Marcus was stuck in a meeting. Otis gently rocking baby Jasmine's stroller outside the pharmacy while she ran in for a prescription. "Go on home now. Get out of this cold." She gave his shoulder a pat, her touch lingering for a second on the worn fabric of his coat, then hurried away toward the house that was both a sanctuary and, increasingly, a cage. Home was warm, but the warmth felt stifling, thick with unspoken words. The television mumbled in the kitchen. Marcus sat at the table, his face illuminated by the cool glow of his phone screen. A plate of the dinner she'd left for him sat untouched, congealing. At 41, Marcus was still a handsome man, the polish of the mid-level city official, the polish that had once seemed so sophisticated, so promising to a younger Keisha, still clung to him, as a hint of softness settled around his middle and his hairline made its strategic retreat. But tonight, something was off. He jerked when the front door closed, flipping his phone screen down on the table with a haste that was almost violent. "You're home?" he asked, not looking up. "Dinner was good, thanks, just not hungry." Kesha hung her coat, feeling the familiar ache in her legs, a dull throb earned from hours on her feet. "You look pale, Marcus. Did something happen at work?" "No," the word shot out, too sharp. He caught himself, manufacturing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was a crooked, guilty thing. "No, everything's fine. Just tired. Listen, Kay." He leaned forward, adopting a conspiratorial tone that felt rehearsed. "I have to go to Fairview tomorrow. Mandatory seminar on regional development. Could run late." Fairview, a sleepy town about 40 miles away. Marcus often had meetings, but he usually grumbled about the drive, the wasted time. Tonight, he seemed almost energized by the prospect. "Okay," Kesha said, turning to fill the kettle. "Need me to iron a shirt?" "I'll do it." He stood up quickly. His phone, on the table, vibrated with a low hum. He snatched it up as if it were a live wire. "Actually, you know what? Let me drive you to work tomorrow. I have to leave early anyway." Kesha froze, the cup in her hand suspended midair. Marcus hadn't offered to drive her anywhere in 2 years. His excuses were always ready. It was out of his way, the traffic was a nightmare, he had calls to make. "You want to give me a ride?" The question felt foolish hanging in the air. "Well, yeah, why not? We're family." He walked over and planted an awkward, dry peck on her cheek. His lips were chapped. His short collar carried a faint, sharp scent of cologne, something unfamiliar, something she didn't remember buying for him. Had someone at the office been wearing it? The thought slithered in unbidden. She pushed it away. Trust was the bedrock. It was the foundation upon which she had built her entire adult life, even as the passion of their early years had settled into a comfortable, quiet stillness. "Thanks," she said quietly, setting the cup down. "That would be nice. My feet are killing me." Later, after Marcus had retreated to the bathroom, taking his phone with him as always, Kesha realized she'd forgotten to buy milk for Jasmine. Her daughter, 16 and fiercely bright, was sequestered in her room, surrounded by textbooks and architectural schematics for her upcoming exams. Not wanting to disturb her, she threw her coat over her house dress and hurried out to the bodega on the corner. The night met her with a damp, biting wind. The bulb over the store entrance flickered erratically, casting stuttering shadows that danced across the wet asphalt. She bought the milk and a loaf of bread, the mundane task an anchor in the strange unease of the evening. As she stepped off the low porch, a figure detached itself from the deep darkness hugging the side of the building. A small scream caught in her throat. She clutched the paper bag to her chest. It was Mr. Otis. But this was not the frail, grateful man from the park. His face was the color of ashes. His lips trembled, not from the cold, but from a terror so profound it seemed to vibrate through him. He was breathing in ragged, shallow gasps, as if he'd run a long way. "Mr. Otis, what in the world are you doing here?" He stepped forward, his movements startlingly swift, and grabbed the sleeve of her coat. His grip was iron, desperate. "Kesha, listen to me." His whisper was a hoarse scrape. His eyes darted up to the lit windows of her apartment. "Do not get in that car tomorrow. You hear me? Do not get in." "What? Why?" She tried to pull back, but he held fast. He offered to drive you." Otis's Adam's apple bobbed convulsively. "He offered so he would know exactly where you are. Don't you dare go with him. Tomorrow morning, 7:15, there's a public bus to Fairview, the one regular folks take." "Why would I go to Fairview? I have work." "To hell with work," the old man's voice cracked. "This is a matter of life and death, Kesha. The life that you foolish woman, think is yours." The words landed like a physical blow. The cold finally penetrated her coat, seizing her heart in a vice. She had never seen this raw, unvarnished fear in Otis's eyes. "Take the bus," he repeated, his voice dropping to an almost inaudible plea. He released her sleeve, stepping back into the pool of darkness, and then he was gone, dissolved into the night as suddenly as he had appeared. Kesha stood rooted, the bag of milk growing heavy in her hands. Her mind was a roaring, silent void. Upstairs, Marcus's silhouette passed the window again. He was on the phone, gesturing with his free hand. She looked from that familiar, unknowable shape to the empty, menacing street. For the first time in 18 years of marriage, the ground beneath her feet, solid and reliable, began to liquefy and slide away. The lie came to her lips the next morning with an eerie, practiced ease. It was the first real lie she'd told Marcus in 2 decades of marriage, and it felt like stepping through a mirror. "Jasmine's sick," she said, avoiding his eyes as he jingled his keys in the hallway. "Her stomach's upset. I'll stay with her a bit, call the doctor, then head in late." Marcus, already mentally gone, didn't even glance toward her daughter's door. He just nodded, brushed a kiss past her ear, and was out the door with a mutter about traffic. Kesha waited, her ear pressed to the quiet hall, until the sound of his car engine faded completely. Then she moved. Her hands shook violently as she wrestled with her coat, missing the armhole once. The bus depot was a chaos of diesel fumes and the greasy aroma of fast food. The 7:15 to Fairview was an aging beast, sighing gray exhaust. Kesha boarded, head down, and took the very last seat by the window. She felt transparent, as if a neon sign flashed above her, "Suspicious wife." The bus was half empty, a few tradesmen with empty buckets, a student lost in headphones, and 2 rows ahead, a woman with a little girl. The bus lurched into motion. Kesha stared at the passing monotony of suburban sprawl, but saw nothing. Otis's words were a drumbeat in her skull. "Watch." The little girl shifted, kneeling on the seat to look out the window. Then she turned, and her gaze, curious and unguarded, locked directly with Kesha's. Kesha's heart stuttered, then began a frantic, hammering rhythm against her ribs, stealing her breath. The girl had Marcus's eyes. Not just the color, a common enough hazel, but the exact distinctive shape, the slightly downturned outer corners that gave his gaze its perpetual, misleading touch of melancholy. She had Marcus's chin, too, with the same faint, singular dimple Kesha had kissed 1,000 times. The child twirled a strand of light brown hair around her finger, a nervous habit Marcus had for as long as she'd known him. But it wasn't just the face. Around the girl's neck, over her pink puffer jacket, hung a silver locket, an antique oval, shaped like a scallop shell. Keisha's blood turned to ice. She remembered that locket. She had found it 6 months ago, tucked deep in the pocket of Marcus's best suit. "It's for Mom's anniversary," he'd said, snatching it quickly, his face flushing. "Took it in to get the clasp fixed. Can you believe they lost it? I raised hell, but what good does it do?" She had soothed him then, said it was the thought that counted. Now the lost locket gleamed against the pink jacket of a child with her husband's face. Keisha's fingers gripped the seat back in front of her, knuckles bleaching white. The air in the bus became thin, suffocating. She wanted to scream for the driver to stop, to let her off, to escape this unfolding horror. "Maya, sit properly," the woman beside the girl said, her voice sharp with maternal irritation. She was young, beautiful, her hair styled in an elegant updo. Chantel. The name appeared in Keisha's mind fully formed, as if she'd always known it. The bus slowed, entering Fairview. The woman, Chantel, and the girl, Maya, stood and moved toward the exit. Moving on autopilot, her legs numb and heavy, Keisha rose and followed. She trailed them at a distance, feeling like a ghost haunting the edges of someone else's life. They disembarked in a neat, quiet neighborhood of brick houses and manicured lawns. Keisha's heart, already a trapped bird, seemed to freeze entirely as they turned onto a lane called MLK Boulevard. And there, parked in the driveway of a charming house with a white picket fence, was Marcus's silver sedan. Keisha ducked behind the corner of the neighboring house, her back pressing against the cold, rough brick. She peered out, just enough to see. The front door of the house opened. Marcus stepped out onto the porch. He was wearing a casual, thick-knit sweater, the one with the subtle reindeer pattern she'd given him last Christmas, the one he said he'd accidentally left at the office and had never brought home. In his hands was a large, steaming mug of tea. "Daddy, Daddy's here!" The girl, Maya, shrieked with pure joy, dropping her little backpack on the garden path and sprinting toward him. Marcus's face broke into a smile Keisha hadn't seen in years. Open, unguarded, radiant. He set the mug on the porch railing, crouched, and swept the child up into his arms, lifting her high, spinning her around. His laugh, full and genuine, rang out in the quiet street. It was the laugh of a young man, a happy man. "My princess, how was the ride?" He covered the top of her head with kisses, then set her down and turned to Chantel. He slid an arm around her waist, pulling her close with a familiar, possessive ease. Chantel said something, smiling, and reached up to straighten the collar of his sweater. Marcus leaned in and kissed her. Not a perfunctum peck, a long, tender kiss, full on the lips. The world dissolved. Keisha's legs gave way. She slid down the rough brick wall and landed hard on the damp, dirty pavement. She didn't feel the impact. This was no tawdry affair, no slip-up on a business trip. This was a whole, complete life. A life where Marcus was a doting father, a loving partner. A life that had been running parallel to her own for 7 years, if the girl's age was any indication. A life where there was no space for Keisha, for Jasmine, for their shared history. A soundless sob racked her body. Tears, hot and relentless, carved paths through her makeup, dripping onto the gray wool of her coat. She sat there, small and broken, watching the scene behind the white fence like a tragic play. She saw herself scrimping, saving, darning his socks, believing every story about late meetings and urgent trips. The fool! The blind, pathetic fool! Marcus picked up Maya's backpack, slung his other arm around Chantel, and the three of them disappeared into the house. The door clicked shut, a sound of finality that echoed in the hollow of Keisha's chest. She didn't know how long she sat there. Eventually, she pushed herself up, her knees wet and stained, and wandered away. The journey home was a blur of interchangeable streets and the drone of a different bus. She found herself in her own kitchen, sitting at the table, staring at the cold, silent kettle, just waiting. Marcus returned 3 hours later. He came in whistling, his keys landing in the ceramic bowl on the hall table with their customary, confident clink. "Keisha, I'm home. You'll never believe it. Seminar ended early. I brought cake." His voice died as he entered the kitchen and saw her. She hadn't moved. Her dirty coat was a heap on the chair beside her. "Kay, what's wrong?" A sliver of real alarm entered his voice. Did something happen to Jasmine? Keisha lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were dry, empty, the color of lead. "I saw her, Marcus. And the girl, Maya." The silence in the kitchen became a solid, ringing thing. All the color drained from Marcus's face. The bakery box slipped from his fingers and hit the linoleum with a soft, tragic thud. You were in Fairview," he whispered. "She has your eyes," Keisha said, her voice flat, devoid of all emotion. "And your locket, the one you lost." Marcus crumbled into the chair opposite her. The polished official vanished, leaving a scared, small man. He buried his face in his hands. "Keisha, I'm sorry. I didn't know how to tell you." He began to cry. Not proud tears, but the messy, snuffling sobs of a child caught in a lie. "It just happened 7 years ago. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I love you, Keisha, but I couldn't abandon them either. Maya, she's a child." Keisha looked at him and felt nothing. No pity, no rage, only a deep, cold disgust. "You didn't want to hurt anyone?" Keisha asked, her voice still terrifyingly quiet. "You've been lying to me for 7 years. Every day, every minute." The front door opened. The sound was authoritative, a violation of the moment. Mama Estelle, Marcus's mother, marched into the hallway. She had her own key, of course. She never called. "What is going on here?" Her voice cut through the emotional murk like a scalpel. Her sharp eyes took in her weeping son, the ruined cake, the stone-faced Keisha. "Marcus, stand up that blubbering. Stand up." Like a chastised schoolboy, Marcus sniffed, wiped his face on his sleeve, and stood. Estelle removed her leather gloves with deliberate slowness, placing them neatly on the table before turning her full attention to her daughter-in-law. Her gaze held no sympathy, but a cold, assessing calculation. "So, you found out," she stated, as if commenting on a minor household mishap. "Well, it was about time. Hiding it forever was foolish." "You knew. It wasn't a question." "Of course I knew." Estelle's laugh was a short, dry bark. "Who do you think helped him buy that house on his salary? Don't be naive." She pulled out a chair and sat, back rod straight. "Listen to me, Keisha. You are a good housekeeper, a faithful wife, but you couldn't give my son the main thing, an heir." Kesha felt the blood leave her face. "We have a daughter, Jasmine." "A daughter is fine," Estelle dismissed with a wave. "But a man needs a son, someone to carry on the name. You couldn't have any more after Jasmine. And Chantel is young, healthy. She's already given him one daughter. She'll give him more, maybe a boy." The monstrous implications settled over the room. You set him up with her?" I helped my son find what he needed, Estelle corrected, her tone imperious. And if you were wiser, you would have understood this yourself. You saw how he suffered, how he wanted more children. But you stayed silent. You closed yourself off in your work, in your little garden. You stopped being a wife to him, Kesha. You became a convenient roommate. Each word was a precisely aimed dart, striking the tender, guilty places Kesha had long avoided. She remembered waving him off when he tentatively mentioned a second child, citing money, stress, Jasmine's needs. She remembered letting herself go, choosing comfort over allure, practicality over passion. She had built the walls of her own prison, brick by careful brick. I'm not justifying Marcus, Estelle continued, watching Kesha deflate. But you aren't a saint either. Now the practicalities. You cannot divorce. Marcus has a career. An election is coming. He doesn't need a scandal, and neither do you. Where would you go? To some rental on a shop clerk's salary? She let the silence stretch, heavy with threat. Everything will stay as it is. Marcus will live here. He'll go to Chantel's on weekends. You will keep your status, the apartment. Jasmine finishes school undisturbed. Everyone is content. And if I don't agree? Kesha's voice was a thread. And who is asking you? The whole town knows Marcus Vaughn. Who are you? Think of your daughter. Do you want her to be the girl whose father left her mother for a younger woman, the object of pity? That evening, desperate for a lifeline, Kesha called her oldest friend, Tasha. She needed to hear just one voice say, "This is monstrous. You leave, I'll help you." "Oh, honey, that's awful. You poor thing," Tasha sighed after Kesha's choked confession. A pause followed, a beat too long. "Marcus, he has that other family in Fairview." "You knew?" The cold in Kesha's heart spread. "Kay, well, there were rumors. It's a small town. Someone saw his car. But I thought, why upset you? You were happy, weren't you?" Was I happy? The question echoed in the hollow space. "We lived peacefully," Kesha said, parroting Tasha's own devastating word. "Exactly, Kay. Don't do anything rash. Men, they're all like that. He provides, he doesn't hit you. Estelle's probably right. Where would you go alone?" Kesha hung up. The phone was an anvil in her hand. She walked to the balcony. The city glittered, a web of lies and silent complicity. Convenient roommate. The branding iron of Estelle's phrase seared her soul. She looked at her hands on the railing. Capable, weary hands. Yes, she was guilty. Guilty of becoming convenient, of choosing peace over truth, of letting fear mortgage her life. But the fear was gone now, burned away by the cold fire of revelation. In its place was a vast, clear emptiness. She went inside. Marcus was asleep on the living room couch, curled fetal under a blanket, pathetic even in slumber. She went to the bedroom, opened the closet, and took out an old duffel bag. She began to pack, slowly, methodically. She had no plan, no money, no destination, but she knew with absolute certainty that she would no longer be convenient. She would not live a lie for the sake of status or Mama Estelle's peace of mind. In the morning, she didn't leave. The bag sat in the corner of the bedroom, a mute accusation. Jasmine woke with a fever, coughing, pale. Maternal instinct, that deep, primal wiring, overrode the fledgling spark of rebellion. Kesha stayed. She made soup, administered medicine, moved through the apartment like a ghost. Every time she passed Marcus, sullen and silent in the living room, the icy ball in her chest tightened. At lunch, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The park, same bench, 1 hour, important. Oh. She went. Mr. Otis was waiting, sitting straighter than she'd ever seen him. On the bench beside him lay an old, battered logbook with a faux leather cover, the kind issued to drivers decades ago. "Did you see?" he asked, his voice hollow. "I saw." "Good." He nodded once, as if closing a file. He pushed the book toward her. "What is this?" "My conscience, Kesha, or what's left of it." She opened it. Otis's handwriting was angular, pressed deep into the paper. Dates, times, mileage, addresses. March 12th, Fairview, MLK Boulevard number 14. Wait 3 hours. Toy store, $1.80. April 5th, North Bank, cash withdrawal. Fairview, MLK number 14. Delivered package. May 20th, Health First Clinic, Fairview. Payment for pediatrician appointment. Page after page, a 5-year chronicle of duplicity. I wasn't just his driver, Otis began, staring at some distant point. I was his alibi. Otis, tell Kesha we got held up at the site. Otis, stop by the florist, buy a bouquet, say it's from me. I stayed silent because I needed the job. Pension is small, wife is sick. I sold my conscience for a paycheck. Then, a year ago, we were driving back from Fairview. He was happy. His daughter Maya had said her first real sentence or some such. And I said, Councilman Vaughn, Jasmine has her music school recital tonight. You promised to be there. Otis gave a bitter, choked laugh. He looked at me like I was dirt, said, You just drive, old man. Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. Kesha is a strong woman. She'll manage. But Chantel needs me. She's alone. He fired me the next day, said I was unreliable. Kesha kept turning pages. Her fingers stopped. Date, 6 months ago. Central Bank, withdrawal from education fund, $3,000. Transferred to card for roof repair, Fairview. The education fund, their sacred, untouchable reserve. Money scraped together from birthdays forgotten, vacations not taken, dreams deferred, all for Jasmine's future. Her hands began to tremble, a fine, sick vibration. She flipped frantically. Withdrawal from education fund, $1,000. Withdrawal from education fund, $5,000. Purchase of furniture for nursery. He emptied it, she whispered, the horror of physical nausea. Almost, Otis confirmed, his voice thick with shame. I drove him to the bank every time. He said he was investing. That money needs to work. It was working on a new roof in Fairview, on private kindergarten for Maya. This betrayal was different, deeper, more vile. The affair was a wound to her heart. This was a calculated theft from his own child's future. He wasn't just a liar and a cheat. He was a predator, feeding his second family with the devoured dreams of his first. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was afraid, Otis said, the simple truth stark and ugly. Afraid of him, afraid you wouldn't believe me. The old man's lost his mind, seeking revenge. You loved him. You worshipped him. He placed his dry, weathered hand on hers on the notebook. But now I see, you have nothing to lose. Take this. It's evidence. If he squirms, if he says there's no money, show him this. Let him know his secret accounting isn't so secret. Thank you, Mr. Otis.
Don't thank me, child. I'm an accomplice. I drove the car. I stayed silent. Forgive me, if you can. He stood, leaning on his cane, and shuffled away, a bent figure carrying the weight of another man's sins. Keisha sat alone as the wind riffled the pages. One entry caught her eye. Purchase, designer coat, $1,500. Payment for spa retreat for Mom Estelle, $1,000. She remembered last Christmas, Marcus taking her hands, his face somber. Kay, it's a tough year. Bonus got cut. Let's skip gifts, just be together. She'd agreed, touched by his apparent solidarity, and made a festive meal from pantry staples, all while he was buying a designer coat for Chantel and spa days for his mother with money meant for his daughter's education. Something final broke then. Pity, doubt, lingering affection. It all incinerated, leaving behind a white-hot, silent rage. She stood, placed the notebook in her bag, and zipped it shut with a sound like a gunshot. She walked home, her steps precise, her mind a crystal-clear weapon. She threw the logbook onto the coffee table in front of Marcus. The thump was judicial. He jumped, reached for it, opened it. His face turned the color of cement. He flipped pages, shrinking with each one. Where did you get this?" he wheezed. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you stole from Jasmine, from your own daughter." He was on his feet, pacing, pulling at his hair. "Keisha, I'll return it. I swear it was temporary. Debts for the coat, the roof." You will return every penny. Of course, I'll sell the car tomorrow. I'll take a loan. Just don't leave. Don't tell Jasmine. Don't ruin me. The fear in his eyes was primal, the fear of a creature facing exposure and destitution. Keisha mistook it for remorse. She placed a pen and paper before him. Write a promissory note, full repayment within a month, and you cease all contact with them completely. He wrote, his hand shaking, letters jagged. He was crying again. I'm a fool, Keisha, such a fool. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance. The following week was a bizarre golden idyll. Marcus was transformed. Punctual, helpful, present. He brought expensive groceries, fixed the dripping faucet, and spent hours with Jasmine over her architecture textbooks. Keisha, hearing their laughter from the other room, felt the frozen knot in her chest begin treacherously to thaw. Maybe people could change. Maybe the shock had saved him. Even Mama Estelle extended an olive branch, inviting Keisha for tea. We were too heated, she said, pouring from her best china. We're all human. Marcus told me about the car, the money. He has chosen you, Keisha. Family is the main thing. She smiled, a practiced, gracious curve of the lips. You're a wise woman to forgive. Keisha ached to believe. She ached to believe that evening they had a family dinner. Marcus was charming, telling stories. Jasmine glowed. Before bed, he hugged Keisha tightly. Thank you, he whispered into her hair. I won't let you down. Never again. She fell asleep that night feeling like a victor. She had salvaged her marriage, secured her daughter's future. She had won. The next morning, Sunday, sunlight poured into the kitchen. Keisha hummed, making pancakes. Marcus slept in. Jasmine was out for a run. The world felt repaired. Then her pen ran out. Annoyed, she remembered a spare in Marcus's briefcase, dumped in the hallway. She opened the worn flap, rummaged in the side pocket, and her fingers brushed against a smooth and glossy rectangle. An ultrasound image. Black and white, grainy, a tiny curved spine, a distinct head. At the bottom, the date, May 22nd, 2 days ago, the day Marcus stayed late to finalize the car sale. She turned it over, on the back in his sprawling hand, my son, my heir, waiting for you. At that precise moment, a phone began to ring in the pocket of Marcus's coat, hanging by the door. Not his main phone, the second one, the one he'd claimed to have thrown into the river as a symbol of his renewed commitment. Slowly, mechanically, she took it out. The screen flashed, Mom. She pressed answer, but did not lift it to her ear. She simply stood, holding her breath, as Mama Estelle's voice, crisp and clear, filled the silent hallway. Hello? Marcus, honey, why aren't you picking up? Chantel called. She's crying. Hormones, you know. You should call her. Reassure her. Everything is going according to plan. A pause. Keisha said nothing. Hello? Marcus? Estelle's voice grew impatient. What are you doing, dawdling with that helper of yours? Be patient, son, just a little longer. Once Chantel births the grandson, we'll get the land title transferred and kick Keisha out. Let her roll on all fours. The main thing is to get her to sign the papers for the lake house land while she's feeling charitable. The lawyer said once it's joint property, we can sell it to cover the debts. Keisha pressed end. The phone clattered to the floor. The noise woke Marcus. He shuffled out, sleepy, scratching his chest. Keisha? What fell? She turned. In one hand, the ultrasound. With the other, she pointed to the phone on the tiles. Marcus saw it, saw the photo. All sleep and pretense vanished. His face hardened into the mask of a cornered animal. You were digging through my things. Helper, Keisha said, the word foul on her tongue. I'm just the helper, to be tolerated until the heir is born. He walked to the kitchen, drank water straight from the pitcher, turned, his expression twisted with contempt he'd never shown her. And what did you want to be, Keisha? A wife? Look at yourself. You turned into a shadow, a function. Fetch, serve, wash. There's nothing to talk to you about except the price of potatoes and Jasmine's grades. You built this prison yourself. Chantel? Chantel is alive. She laughs. She looks at me like a man, not a utility. The blows landed, each one true. She had hidden. She had avoided conflict. She had let the marriage atrophy. Yes, she admitted, her voice quiet but steady. I am guilty. I became boring, convenient. But that didn't give you the right to steal from your daughter. That didn't give you the right to plan to throw me out of my grandmother's land. How did you think I was going to pay the debts? That land is worth a fortune. We're still married. Half is mine. It's my inheritance. It's not marital property. The lawyer will find a way. You shouldn't have dug, Keisha. If you'd sat quietly, I might have left you something. But now it's war, and you will lose. My mother will destroy you. You have no money, no connections, no backbone. She looked at the stranger before her. All illusion was gone. Get out. This is my apartment, too. Get out, she repeated, her voice rising, or I will go onto that balcony right now and scream it to the entire neighborhood. I will call your boss. I have nothing left to lose, Marcus. Do you?
He saw the wild, desperate fire in her eyes, a fire he'd never seen, and it cowed him. He spat a curse, grabbed his jacket and briefcase. Hysterical fool. See how you sing when Mother gets through with you. The door slammed. Alone, Kesha sank to the floor. No tears came. Inside was only scorched earth and a cold, clarion certainty. War. Very well, but she would not fight for him. She would fight for her dignity. She fled the suffocating apartment, seeking solace in the only thing that was unequivocally hers, her small vegetable plot behind the building. She attacked the weeds with a hoe, channeling her fury into each stroke. Dirt flew, staining her clothes and skin. Kesha? She turned. Pop Franklin, Marcus's father, stood at the garden gate. A tall, perpetually stooped man who had spent 40 years as a silent satellite to his wife's blazing sun. Please leave, she said, wiping sweat with her arm. He opened the gate and walked in, his movements careful. His eyes, usually watery and distant, held a new, desperate resolve. I didn't come as an ambassador. I came as a man. He placed a hand on the gnarled trunk of the old apple tree. 40 years. 40 years I watched Louise Estelle break people. First me. I wanted to be an artist. She said it wasn't serious. Go to the factory. So I went. Then she took Marcus and molded this. He looked at Kesha, his gaze filled with a lifetime of regret. I stayed silent. When she drove out his first girlfriend, when she taught him to lie, I thought, endure. It's family. But today? He pulled a small black flash drive from his cardigan pocket. This morning, they were in the kitchen. Estelle, Marcus, their lawyer. I left the living room door a crack. They think the old man is deaf. I recorded it. He held it out. His hand trembled not with age, but with pent-up rage. Kesha took the cold plastic. Why? I'm saving what's left of my soul. They'll eat you alive if you don't strike first. He leaned closer. One more thing. Chantel is at the Conservatory now, her students' recital. Marcus is there. He bought her a necklace, gold with rubies, a gift from his mother for the grandson. He met her eyes. Estelle fears one thing, publicity. Marcus is a coward in the light. The concert starts in half an hour. A plan, clean and sharp as a scalpel, formed in Kesha's mind. She didn't need a long court battle. She needed a theater and an audience. Thank you, Pop. He nodded, a single tear tracing through his gray stubble. Go, daughter, and don't pity them. They didn't pity you. The conservatory lobby was a symphony of pre-performance nerves and perfume. Kesha moved through the crowd, a grenade in a party dress, clutching Jasmine's portable Bluetooth speaker. She saw them instantly. Marcus, gleaming in his best suit, Chantel, radiant in a dress that draped over her pregnant belly, and Mama Estelle, standing slightly apart like a queen reviewing her court. Marcus was holding a velvet box, whispering to Chantel, who laughed, a bright, happy sound. Kesha walked directly up to them. The music from the hall had just stopped. Intermission. "Good evening." Marcus turned, his smile decomposed. Estelle's eyes narrowed to slits. "Kesha," Marcus hissed, "go home. Don't embarrass yourself." "I came to offer congratulations." Kesha set the speaker down on a table of programs and pressed play. Mama Estelle's voice, amplified and echoing, filled the suddenly silent lobby. "Once Chantel births the grandson, we'll transfer the land title and kick Kesha out. Let her roll on all four sides. The main thing is to get her to sign the documents, tricking her while she's feeling charitable. We can sell it for the debts." Then Marcus's voice. "Ah, Chantel. Well, tolerate her whims. She'll give birth. Maybe she'll get boring, too." The recorded conversation played out, a naked exhibition of cynical calculation. The crowd froze, every eye riveted on the perfect family, now crumbling in real time. Chantel went white. You said you loved me, that we were a family?" "It's edited. She's crazy." Marcus lunged for the speaker, but Pop Franklin materialized, standing solidly between his son and the device, his arms crossed. "You're paying for my delivery with your daughter's money?" Chantel's question, quiet and shattered, carried in the hush. "You stole from your own child?" The recording ended. The silence was absolute, judgmental. Mama Estelle seemed physically shrink, her facade of regal authority dissolving into nothing. Pop Franklin turned to her. "I'm leaving, Estelle. I'm filing for divorce. Live with your heir." Chantel tore the ruby necklace from her throat and hurled it at Marcus. "Don't ever come near me or my children again." She fled through the stunned crowd. Marcus stood alone, a small, ridiculous figure holding a velvet box for a ghost. He looked at Kesha, his eyes empty. "You destroyed everything." "No, Marcus," she said, her voice calm and clear. "I just turned on the lights." She turned and walked away, not feeling triumph, but an immense, weary relief. 8 months later, winter cloaked the city in a clean, white silence. Kesha stood in the window of her small shop at the artisan market, comforts of home. The sign glowed warmly. Inside were stacks of linen, embroidered napkins, soft throws, beautiful, practical things. Her things. The business was tiny, but it was hers, started with the proceeds from her garden and a small loan Pop Franklin co-signed. Marcus had vanished, rumors placing him in another state, fleeing debts and disgrace. Mama Estelle became a recluse in her too large apartment. Pop Franklin, now living in a rented room and painting for 40 years, stopped by often with pastries and bookkeeping help. The door chimed. Jasmine entered, cheeks rosy from the cold, a tube of architectural drawings under her arm. "Mom, aced the final." Kesha smiled. The court had ordered Marcus to repay the education fund. The money trickled in slowly, erratically, but it was enough for Jasmine's first semester. They would manage. They drank herbal tea in the back room as snow fell past the window. It wasn't a wild, joyful happiness. It was a peace hard-won, a quiet satisfaction built on the shore of a shipwreck. She had lost a husband, 20 years, and a certain naive faith, but she had found herself. She was no longer a shadow, no longer convenient. She was Kesha Vaughn. Closing the shop that evening, she saw Mr. Otis walking down the avenue with his wife, supporting her arm. He saw Kesha, stopped, and raised his hand in a gentle wave. Kesha waved back. She inhaled the frosty air. It smelled of snow, of pine from the wreaths on the lampposts, and of something else, something fragile and tenacious. Hope. Life continued. Different, difficult, honest. And the honesty was the thing that felt most foreign. It was a stark, unadorned landscape after a lifetime of living in carefully curated rooms. The quiet in her small apartment was no longer stifling. It was spacious. It held the sound of Jasmine's pencil scratching against vellum, the gentle hiss of the kettle, the turning pages of a book chosen for no one's pleasure but her own. The silence was no longer something to be filled with nervous chatter or the low drone of a television left on for company. It was a presence, a companion. Some nights, the loneliness was a physical weight, a cold stone on her chest. She would lie awake, and the ghost of the old life would visit, not the shocking, painful memories of betrayal, but the small, insidious ones. The way Marcus used to warm his feet against her calves in winter. The stupid, private joke about a mispronounced street name they'd shared for a decade. The simple, unthinking trust of handing him her coffee cup to hold while she searched for her keys. Those were the memories that ambushed her, the ones that proved the entire edifice hadn't been a hollow stage set. Parts of it had been real. Parts of it had been home. Mourning the good parts, she learned, was a more complicated grief than hating the bad. During the day, she fortified herself with work. Comforts of home was more than a shop. It was a statement. Every neatly folded tablecloth, every arrangement of scented soaps was a testament to order rustled from chaos. Her customers, mostly women, spoke to her differently now. There was a new, subtle respect in their eyes, a curiosity they didn't voice. The story, of course, had spread. The conservatory scene had become local legend, whispered over coffee and bridge tables. Keisha Vaughn, the quiet shopkeeper who had faced down the mighty Estelle Vaughn and her rising star son in a public hall and walked away the victor. She was no longer just Marcus Vaughn's wife. She was the woman who had turned on the lights. One afternoon, as she was arranging a display of hand-thrown pottery, the shop bell chimed. A woman entered, her movements hesitant. It was Chantel. Time seemed to stutter. Keisha's hands, holding a speckled glaze bowl, went still. Chantel looked different. The polished, pregnant glamour was gone. She was thinner, her face drawn, the beauty still there, but hardened by strain. She carried no visible baby bump. In her arms was an infant car seat, covered with a light muslin blanket. "Keisha," Chantel said, the word barely audible. Keisha said nothing. She set the bowl down, the click of pottery on wood loud in the quiet. I didn't know where else to go." Chantel's eyes were wide, shimmering with unshed tears. "He stopped answering my calls. The money, it stopped last month. The lawyer he hired for me withdrew, said Marcus was no longer retaining him." Keisha felt a cold flicker of something that was not quite sympathy, but a distant, grim recognition. Marcus's pattern was clear. Use, then discard. She was just further down the line. "Why are you here?" Keisha's voice was flat. "Because you're the only one who knows what he is, really knows." Chantel's voice broke. She looked down at the car seat. "His name is Leo. He's 4 months old." The name, Heir, chosen by Estelle, no doubt, hung in the air between them. Keisha's gaze was pulled inexorably to the car seat. A tiny, perfect hand had escaped the blanket, fingers curled in sleep. Estelle, Chantel swallowed hard. When it was a girl, she was disappointed but accommodating. When Leo was born, she was ecstatic for a while, but then the questions started. Paternity tests. She said Marcus needed to be certain before any more investments were made. Marcus, he just vanished, left me with a mountain of bills from the private clinic, the nanny she insisted on, all of it. The house is in his name. I got an eviction notice. The sheer, brutal efficiency of it was breathtaking. Estelle had gotten her grandson. The vessel that had delivered him was now expendable. Marcus, ever the coward, had simply fled the fallout. "I have nothing," Chantel whispered, a tear finally spilling over. "My family, they don't speak to me. I'm the other woman. The town hates me. I thought you might understand being left with nothing." And there it was, the astounding, monstrous irony. They were both casualties of the same man, standing in the wreckage of different wings of the same collapsing palace. Keisha felt a surge of anger, so pure it was almost clean, not at Chantel, but at the machinery that had chewed them both up. "I don't have money to give you," Keisha said finally, her tone not unkind, but firm.
What I have, I'm using for my daughter's education and to keep this roof over our heads." Chantel noted, a gesture of hopeless understanding. "I'm not asking for money. I'm asking— I don't know what I'm asking. A name, a lawyer who isn't owned by Estelle, someone who might help me fight for child support, something." She looked around the shop, at the clean lines and careful order. "You built this. After. I have nothing to build with." Keisha studied her rival, this woman who had lived in the sun while she lived in the shadow, only to discover they were both in the same cage. She thought of Jasmine. She thought of the stolen education fund. She thought of the lake house land they had tried to steal. Her war wasn't with this tired, scared girl holding a baby. "Wait here," Keisha said. She went to the small office in the back where Pop Franklin had helped her set up a rudimentary filing system. She rifled through a folder and pulled out a business card. It was for the legal aid attorney who had helped her navigate the initial steps of separating her finances, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Audrey Wells who had a particular dislike for entitled men and their mothers. She wrote a note on the back of the card. "Audrey, this is Chantel Hayes. She needs help with a Marcus Vaughn paternity/child support case. He's skipped. Mother is Estelle Vaughn. They play dirty. Keisha." She walked back out and handed the card to Chantel, her fingers trembling. She looked from it to Keisha's face, confusion and a dawning, desperate gratitude mingling in her eyes. "Why are you helping me?" Keisha looked past her, out the shop window to the snowy street. "Because he's the one who should pay," she said quietly. "Not you, and certainly not that baby." She met Chantel's gaze. "Now go, and don't come back here. This isn't a friendship. This is a transaction. You get your lawyer. I get the satisfaction of knowing Marcus and Estelle have one more fire to put out." Chantel nodded, a quick, jerky motion. She tucked the card into her purse, adjusted the blanket over the sleeping Leo, and without another word, left the shop. The bell chimed her exit. Keisha stood for a long time, staring at the spot where Chantel had stood. The encounter left her feeling scraped out, strangely exhausted. She had extended a hand across a chasm of betrayal, not for forgiveness, but for a cold, strategic alliance. It felt ruthless. It felt necessary. The seasons turned. The deep snows of winter gave way to a hesitant, muddy spring. Jasmine's acceptance letter for the State University's architecture program arrived, and their celebration was quiet, profound, and entirely their own. The money from Marcus was sporadic, arriving in frustratingly small checks that Audrey Wells's firm had to aggressively pursue, but it was something. Jasmine worked part-time at the library. Keisha took on custom sewing orders in the evenings. They were frugal. They were a team.
Pop Franklin became a steady, gentle presence. He helped in the shop, his large, careful hands surprisingly adept at arranging displays. He brought Keisha sketches of his paintings, watercolors of the lake, of old buildings, filled with a soft, mournful light that spoke of decades of suppressed vision. He never spoke of Estelle. He spoke of light and shadow and the way the green changed on the leaves in May. One evening in late spring, he stayed to help Keisha with inventory. As they counted stock, he cleared his throat awkwardly. "Louise, Estelle, she's selling the big house," he said, not looking up from a ledger. Keisha paused, a stack of linen napkins in her hands. "Oh?" "Moving to a condo, 1 bedroom." He finally met her eyes. There was no triumph in his, only a deep, weary sadness. "The situation with the other child, the boy. It's become public. The legal aid lawyer is good. Demands are being made. It's messy, the kind of messy she spent a lifetime avoiding." He sighed. "She looks old, Keisha. For the first time, she just looks old and tired." Keisha felt no joy in the news. It was simply a fact, like a weather report. The empire was in retreat. And Marcus? Pop Franklin shook his head. "Gone. Really gone. No one knows where. The whispers are he left debts behind that even his mother can't cover without selling assets." He placed a hand on hers, stopping her counting. "You should know She tried to contest the separation of your grandmother's land. My lawyer, well, the lawyer I share with you now, sent her the tape, the one from the Conservatory, specifically the part about tricking you into signing. She withdrew the contest immediately. The tape, the final, definitive weapon Pop Franklin had given her. Keisha hadn't needed to use it in court. The threat of its public release had been enough. She looked at this kind, broken man who had found his courage too late for himself, but just in time for her. "Thank you, Pop." He squeezed her hand. "No, thank you, daughter. You gave me a place to put my decency. It had been in storage for a long, long time." Summer arrived, bringing heat and tourists to the market. Business at Comforts of Home picked up. Keisha hired a high school girl to help on weekends, giving her the first faint breath of managerial freedom. She started a small gardening blog on the shop's website, sharing tips on growing herbs in window boxes and preserving summer produce. It was a quiet, productive life. One sweltering August afternoon, a familiar car, a modest, sensible sedan, pulled up outside the market. A man got out, dressed in simple slacks and a short-sleeved shirt. It took Keisha a moment to recognize him, out of context and stripped of his uniform. It was Mr. Otis. He entered the shop, moving more steadily than she remembered. He had color in his face. "Mr. Otis?" "Keisha," he smiled, a genuine, warm expression that transformed his features. "The place looks wonderful." "You look well." "The medicine helps, and the fruit," he chuckled, a soft, raspy sound. "My granddaughter got me one of those tablet computers, shows me how to video call. I see her kids in Atlanta every Sunday." He paused, looking around. "I heard about everything at the Conservatory. I always knew you had more spine than you showed." "I learned from a good driver that sometimes you have to take the wheel," she said gently. He nodded, his eyes growing serious. "That's actually why I'm here, not just a visit." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. "I've found this. After everything, I was cleaning out some old boxes, things from my driving days. I found this. It got stuck behind a drawer liner in my old desk at home. I never saw it." He handed it to her. It was addressed to Marcus Vaughn, City Hall office, in a flowing, feminine handwriting Keisha didn't recognize. It was postmarked 7 years ago. The return address was in Fairview. "I shouldn't give it to you," Otis said quietly. "It's his mail, but given what was in that logbook, and given that it's from then, I thought you had the right to decide what to do with it. You can burn it, you can open it. It's your choice now." He touched the brim of an imaginary hat, a ghost of his old driver's gesture, and left her alone with the envelope. Keisha stood behind the counter, the aged paper rough under her fingertips. 7 years ago, the beginning. Did she want to know? Did she need another ghost, another voice from the past complicating her hard-won peace? Her curiosity was no longer a nervous, fearful thing. It was a clean, sharp tool. This was her history, too, even the ugly parts. She had earned the right to all of it. Using a letter opener from the drawer, she slit the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of pale pink stationery. The scent of faded perfume, something sweet and cheap, wafted out. The handwriting was the same as the envelope, now hurried, slightly sloppy. "Marcus, I'm scared. I took the test. It's positive. I don't know what to do. You said you would handle it. You said you would talk to your mother, that she would understand about complications with your wife. But you've stopped calling. I've left messages. I'm not asking for anything from me, but this is a baby. Your baby. My mother says I should take care of it and not ruin your life. But what about my life? What about this child's life? Please, just talk to me. Tell me what you want me to do. I'm so alone. Chantel." Keisha read it twice.
The date at the top was just weeks before Marcus had suddenly, inexplicably, become passionate about a second child, a passion he'd directed at her, a passion she gently, worriedly deflected because of money, because of stress. He had been trying to create an alibi, a cover story, a legitimate reason for a new child. When she refused, he and Estelle simply moved to Plan B, the secret family. The note wasn't a love letter. It was a record of a trap closing. Chantel, young and terrified, reaching out to the man who had already decided she was a problem to be managed. Keisha carefully folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and put it in the small lockbox under the counter where she kept her shop's important papers. She didn't feel anger. She felt a profound, settling clarity. The story was complete now. She knew the first chapter as well as the last. She knew the monster in the tale wasn't just Marcus or even Estelle. It was the sheer, banal cruelty of selfishness, the treating of human beings as instruments for legacy, for status, for convenience. That evening, as she closed the shop, she didn't feel the weight of the past. She felt its texture, rough, complicated, finished. She walked home through the soft twilight, past gardens in full bloom. The air smelled of cut grass and grilling meat, the ordinary symphony of a summer night. Jasmine was at the kitchen table, bent over a complex model of balsa wood and glue, her brow furrowed with concentration. "Hey, Mom, can you hold this steady for a sec?"
Keisha walked over without hesitation and placed her hands where her daughter directed. Their heads were close together, their breathing synchronizing in the quiet focus of the task. In that moment, holding a fragile structure together for her child to build upon, Keisha knew this was the only legacy that mattered. Not a name, not an heir, not a spotless facade. This, the quiet, resilient architecture of a life rebuilt by hand, piece by honest piece, on a foundation of truth she had finally dared to see. The lights were on, and they would never go out again.